up, everyone, and welcome back to the Talkoffame podcast. I'm your host, Kylie, and today I'm super excited to be chatting with Anika Pavel. She's a multi-talented writer, model, actress, and one-time James Bond girl. She's the author of the compelling new book, Encounter with the Future. Anika's unique life journey from her childhood in Iron Curtain Czechoslovakia to her rise as an international fashion model and actress. And now a writer makes her a fascinating guest for our podcast. Encounter with the Future is a collection of essays that weaves together her experience across continents and historical events, told with her characteristic wit and perspectives. Welcome to the show, Anika. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. That's very nice. I'm
So,
excited too.
so to kickstart off this episode, can you share your journey from Slovakia to becoming a international model and actress?
Well, I started in Ipswich, England. I came as an au pair, and I worked for a woman that was actually working. She ran a lodging house where she had 5 lodgers, and everything was going very well. I wanted to learn to speak English, so that was incredibly important to me. But then in August 1968, Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, and made me immigrant. And so from then on, I had to fend for myself. I came to London, and there I actually entered a competition. A friend of mine said, "Here they are looking for international models," and so I joined, and I was one of the 10 girls selected to become a model, and that's how I really became a model, by pretty much chance. But after that, it's still a very hard work. You supplement with working in a restaurant, and you work restaurant at night. You do modeling during the day, and but little by little, I got established and became quite a successful model. I suddenly saw myself on a magazine covers, and I got to work in a television shows in the BBC, and I did TV commercials. Most memorable was for the toothpaste, close-up toothpaste commercial, and then that kind of led to my audition to James Bond, and then I had a small role in a James Bond movie, but a big role in advertising the movie. And so I worked with Roger Moore, which was wonderful.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. How old were you when all of this happened?
I was 18.
Oh my God, you're 18?
Yeah,
Oh my God, if
I was
I'm
17.
18 now, so
Right?
imagine if I had all that life at 18, I literally would be living in a dream.
Yeah, it was exciting. Well, by the time I was establishing myself as a model, I was 20. But I came to England at 17, and then I was working there for a year, so I was 18, and then became a model. And it took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, to get established myself um, as a model. But yeah, I was in very early 20s.
Oh, that's not bad. 3 years to become a model, that is honestly shorter than what it takes on the mo other models too. Were you all in London when this ha happened, or were you
Yes.
in Hong Kong?
No, I lived in London, but for modeling, I traveled to Hong Kong actually twice before I actually lived there. I did a TV commercial there, and we did big fashion show for a British government, and because that Hong Kong was still a British colony,
Hmm.
and so I traveled to Singapore, to Japan, and Germany, France, all over the place as a model.
Oh,
But
nice.
I was based in London.
How often did you travel? Was it every week, or how did that work?
Um, well, I would say on average once a month.
No, that's not bad. That's actually pretty
Yeah.
decent. If I had that life traveling once a month for modeling, I literally would be tr doing my best life because as we were talking before we were recording, me and you are both travel people. So anytime I'm traveling, whether it's in the States or different countries, whether it's for work or what, I'm the happiest person.
Yes, traveling is, my mother used to say, travel is a university of life.
It
And
is.
it really is, you learn so much, you absorb so much. And some of the trips were short, like Paris was only an hour flight. I went to Frankfurt a lot, and that was an hour and a half. So some of them were short, European trips. But yes, I did go to longer trips as well.
Like you probably learn probably from traveling to different countries or states in actual school, most likely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, with your childhood, like how did your childhood under the Iran current influence change your worldview and career choices?
Well, when you're a child, you don't particularly notice what you are missing because the parents protect you. I always had enough to eat. My father was a tailor, so I had always clothes in. It wasn't until you get to be teenager, 15, 16, and you suddenly realize that you cannot see the movies you want to see, you cannot travel, and you cannot listen to the Beatles and Elvis Presley. So you suddenly realize that you want out.
Mm.
And so the desire to travel becomes much more pronounced. And as I said, I was very lucky that the political situation was changing. And so I was able to get out of Czechoslovakia and travel to
Like
England.
with that world during that time, it was so much different back then when you were like a teenager than it is right now. Like to not be able to really listen to music or like Elvis Presley or the Beatles is something that I personally could not handle if I lived during that time. Because Elvis Presley
Right.
is one of my favorite artists, so if I wasn't able to listen to any music, especially Elvis, I would just lose it.
Well, yeah, it was very hard. We were managing to sometimes steal it from Vienna. We could get it. And so if somebody got Elvis recording, the whole class would be huddled around and we were all going. And so, we did hear it and loved it, but it was always smuggled in by somebody.
Yeah.
And so the more have tried to forbid us to listen to it, the more we wanted it.
I know, like that's how I am. Like, if someone forbids it, I'm like, I just want more. Like, the only way, like you said, is to bring smuggle it in or go into like a private place to listen. Like, so it
Yeah,
was very hard during that time to actually like, okay, let's listen to music, let's sneak a record player in with a tape. That's kind of how like that phase of life usually worked. And I
right,
really like applaud you for like living through that because I know like I'm sure it was a hard time and I'm sure like I personally wouldn't be able to handle it if I was alive right
right. Absolutely.
now. So what to go to your book, like what inspired you to write Encounter with the Future and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer, and I used to write and publish. I had few things published in Slovak, but when I came to England, I suddenly realized I my English wasn't good enough, and I couldn't really write in Slovak. So it took a long time, and by the time I I felt my English was good enough, I went to school. Then I realized that there was a lot of people had a different misconceptions about life in Czechoslovakia. And also my children wanted me to write what it was like. And so I decided to write essays and about my members of the family, about my childhood, and about the political situation at the time. And suddenly these essays started to get published. So then again, my children have pushed me to put it in a book. And so I kind of filled in sometimes to make it coherent. I wrote few stories just to sort of knit it together, as it were.
Because when you're writing essays, especially with the life that and experiences that you had, like it's worth writing. Like it's worth writing for maybe your grandchildren or your kids because people want to know that stuff. Like even if you having lived through that time and everything, like people want to learn what that experience was like, no matter if they're older or didn't live through that experience. Everyone wants to hear about other people's experiences.
Yeah, you are right. And I think then in many ways, I wrote it more for younger people because I think that the older generation, my generation, they have a preconceived notion what it was like. And and no matter how much I write what it really was like, it's kind of harder for them to accept. Whereas like my children's generation, your generation, people don't know that much about it. The propaganda is no longer focused on the Iron Curtain and on the days of Soviet Union. So people are really hungry to know what was it like. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I think it is important to leave the legacy for the younger generation by somebody who lived there rather than some historians who read books and think, this is what it was like. Here you have it from a horse's mouth, as it were, you
Mm-hmm.
know, who
Yeah.
lived there and went through it.
Yeah, because when like the most of the stuff, like especially my generation, like most of the stuff we learn is through school. And the things that we learn in school from our maybe history teacher is maybe kind of how it started, how it ended, in the middle part. We never actually heard from people like yourself that actually live there and get other people's perspectives.
About the life.
And to have these conversations, it's like it's more meaningful to actually get a hands-on experience than a teacher who's telling us about it, like a middle and beginning, than someone who actually lived through it. It gives us more of a fresh perspective and learn more about that situation than the actual teacher or historian.
Right, because they tell you certain facts and certain um, points of view where I can tell you what was it actually like.
Mm-hmm. And that gives you that question. You literally just asked it, but what was it like though? I have to ask now. Like what was that kind of experience like for you?
Mm. Well, as I said, as a child, it wasn't as horror as people tend to imagine. You
Hmm.
know, there were certain good points. Everything was free. Um, and it also depends when you look at it from a child who lived there, from my, if you ask me what my eyes saw as a child who lived there, that child didn't really see much difference because everybody was the same. Everyone wore pretty much the same clothes. We were all taught the same books, and we were all involved in sports and music, classical music, and so everything as far as we what we wanted because we did not know any different. We had so it was pretty happy childhood, really, running around streets and skating, swimming, whatever we wanted to do. It was, as I said, when you get to be 16 and suddenly you don't want to be wearing the same clothes the entire class is wearing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people try to begin to carve their own individuality. And that's when you realize that you are living in oppression because you're not allowed to have a personality. Everyone was the same. And, the same haircut. It was just very uniformed.
Mm-hmm.
But at that, people start to learn. But, and also with the television coming, we were able to hook up to Vienna, and you get from a different countries, you suddenly see what you at home never see.
Mm-hmm.
And you can lock up people for so long, and eventually, little by little, the outside will start seeping in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened in 1916 and then in 70 when people just finally had enough. And you wanted to be able to do what the teenagers in America or in England were able to do.
To not live the life that most people live is something that is really heart-wrenching for a lot of people. Like to not live like other people, especially Americans, like it can be gut-wrenching. Like to do like other things and not living the life that you want and literally seeing people all in the same outfits, all the same hair. It just gets annoying. Like you just like, why am I living in a world where people are the same? Like I want to actually have a life where I can do whatever I want. And that was a time where television was becoming a thing. So when
Yeah.
television was a thing, you didn't know what was going on until you watched the TV or read a newspaper. And because newspapers were way more popular back then than it was now. So
Well,
when
nobody,
so
you
when
know, the thing, go
oh
ahead. But the thing was about newspapers, nobody believed newspapers. You know, that you've heard the famous Pravda. That means in Slovak and in Russian, it means truth. But nobody believed that. Absolutely nobody believed that. Everyone got a paper and just turned to the sports. And as long as you only had a papers, it was easier to brainwash people. But once, you know, the radio got better, people could listen, people learned to speak the languages. And so they could listen to the German radio. And they, you know, then you had places like BBC, World Service, or Radio Free Europe, or Voice of America. So people started to listen to it and they realized what was in a paper was nonsense. And
mhm.
so nobody believed it.
Because like
But
the way newspapers and TV portray things are so much different from what they are today. Like a lot of fake news and everything. Like that's still a big thing than it was maybe 30 years ago.
yeah, I mean, it's interestingly enough, it kind of made made a turnaround. It
It
goes all the
did.
way around because then it was uniform. Every paper said the same thing. That the communist paper said the same thing. America's bad, we are good. But
Hmm.
now you have all these outlets and you still don't know who to believe. At least
Hmm.
we knew that we did not believe them.
Yeah,
Well,
because you don't
there
know
was no
which paper or
ambiguity.
television is telling the truth or not. So you don't know because everyone's telling the same story.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. At least it was in some way simpler because, like, whatever was in a paper, you believed exactly the opposite.
Yeah, because you're
But
like,
now
oh,
it's
this
hard
is
to
probably a
tell.
situation. It probably happened, but it's probably told a different way than what happened.
Right.
So the last thing I have to ask you is where can listeners learn more about your work and purchase Encounter with the Future?
Well, I have a website and it's www.anikapavel.com. And in my website, it will bring you absolutely directly to the sign, and you just press the button. You can get it here, and it takes you directly to Amazon where you can purchase the book. And I think I hope that your generation, because I have the children, your generation, and I think they certainly learned a lot from it. And I hope the young generation will read what it was like for children when people who are now my age were your age,
Because
if
I'm
that
the
makes
type of
sense.
person that loves to learn about that sort of thing because I'm a big history nerd. So that sort of thing is something that I love to learn more because to go through that experience is something that needs to be talked about a lot more. And a lot of teenagers sometimes don't really want to see those things because they're like, why should I care about something that happened 30 years ago? I should only care about something that's happening in this century and date and time rather than 30
Well,
years
you know why? I will tell them why. Because history, unfortunately, have a way of repeating itself.
ago. It
I
could.
am writing about Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, and what's happening now? Russia invaded Ukraine.
Hmm.
Same thing.
Hmm.
So I think that we learn from our mistakes and we learn from history. So it is kind of important.
It is. And that's why, I'm the type of person that loves to read things. You don't ever know, like, if history repeats itself, like you said. To learn more about maybe conflicts between countries or the certain country situation that is something that people should learn in case, something similar happens again, even though it might not be ideal or less likely to happen. It's good at least to read something about it to know and get a better understanding of what maybe your ancestors went through or what people went through in time to kind of get a fresh perspective on something new.
Absolutely. You are so right.
So
So
thank you so much for coming on and joining us today. It was literally an honor to have you on, and like to literally get your perspective on different things is something that I want to learn more about, and that's why I want to have you on. It's like to get a new perspective on something and events that you went through is something that I know a lot of people will take advantage of, especially myself, as history is changing evolvedly, and so a lot of topics like this needs to be talked about more. But I really want to thank you so much for coming on today and time and sharing your story with us. It literally means so much.
good. Well, you are very welcome. And on my website, there's also a history of the country. And so there's a lot more about, you learn a lot more about my life on my website. It's, as I said, it's a history of my country. It's also my modeling career and my acting and also my writing. So
Awesome. So make sure to go check it out, guys. I literally totally recommend. And thank you everyone for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, and review, and I'll talk to you guys very soon.